Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest edition of the Woke Bros. Of course, I'm Big Wos, aka Wosny Lambre, joined as always by my brother, my partner, Nando Vila on the west side of Los Angeles. What's going on, brother, man?
Not much, dude. Just enjoying the sunshine out here. It's getting hot.
It's getting hot in here. It's getting hot in here. And it's getting hot in the revolving door, Nando. It was announced just today, or yesterday, sorry, that Tom Perez, former labor secretary of one Barack Obama, has joined a union busting law firm specifically to bust unions. We're going to get into that towards the end of the show. The Dems have had their hair on fire basically since January 6th and insurrection, and they're depressing the vote and blah, blah, blah. Like, the rhetoric has been kind of dire. But yet they remain complacent on the policy side, and people like Joe Manchin, my man Chuck Pierce has gone to calling him Neville Chamberlain. It's gotten so bad. And so we're going to get into the Democratic Party's complacency on the topic. But first, man, President Joe Biden visited Tulsa, Oklahoma, the Greenwood area, where the Oklahoma massacre, genocide, act of terrorism, state-sponsored at that, happened back in 1921. It's important that we acknowledge American history and all the horrible things that have happened to Black people, Indigenous people, Japanese internment. We got to keep all of that in the forefront because it's real and it matters. And he used the opportunity to announce a plan to invest in Black business. I got this from BET.com. It says the White House has announced a plan to invest billions in order to support Black and minority-owned small businesses. They did this on Tuesday. The Small Business Administration initiatives will, quote, reduce barriers to small business ownership and success, according to a statement by the administration. The program will feature a number of platforms to offer economic support to businesses, which will address racial discrimination in the housing market, increase federal contracting with small businesses by 50%. It will also place focus on the American Jobs Plan by proposing a $10 billion community revitalization fund, Nando. Supply $15 billion in new grants toward building the nation's infrastructure and $31 billion for small business programs to increase capital in small businesses. And this is from the White House. This is a quote directly from the White House. These initiatives will increase access to capital by establishing a new direct loan program for the smallest businesses, developing new loan products to support small manufacturers and businesses that invest in clean energy, and launching a new small business investment corporation that will make early stage equity investment in small businesses with priority for those owned by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. And finally, it says the American Jobs Plan will also invest billions of dollars in SBA technical assistance programs that incubate and offer mentoring and technical assistance to 8A firms, reinforce the American subcontracting network to create paths. All right, so Nando, they didn't really present any sort of information as to why they know these programs are going to be targeted enough that enough Black small business entrepreneur types are going to get it. It just sounds good, I guess. Yeah. What are your thoughts on this, man?
This is the problem with a lot of the policy prescriptions that liberals and specifically the Democratic Party in America come up with for any problem. I mean, when you think about something like climate change, for example, it sounds a lot like what they are just proposing now to improve the lives of Black people in the United States, federal loan guarantees for new alternative energy development, basically finding a capitalist solution to this problem. And that is just never really going to work. I mean, it might help out some Black small business owners, but small business owners can become some of the biggest tyrants in the universe, no matter whether they're Black, brown, white, or green. They usually are some of the most reactionary people on the planet. And that's true across societies. I mean, because they are directly overseeing, the employment of like a small group of people that they have to lord over and extract value from. So they become very tyrannical in some ways. But whether that's going to help like the vast majority of Black people in this country, no, absolutely not. And I think it's interesting that there's this kind of memory, a recovered memory of the Tulsa massacre. I think it has a lot to do with the Watchmen
movie
show.
And and LeBron produced a movie. Yep.
Yeah. Like there's been a kind of revitalization of that. And what it tells me, I mean, outside of like the obvious horrific crime that it was, this kind of like, racist mob just like murdering Black people, the other side of it that it tells you is that like racial progress in this country is not linear. And there is this feeling that we have now, and it's very common for a lot of the problems that America faces today, where we assume that progress has been linear, kind of 45 degree, just kind of things get better over time. And the reality is that things get better and worse at the same time. And it's like hard to determine whether it nets out in any way, like how it nets out. For example, if you look at the African-American population in the United States, it is true that we passed civil rights in the 1960s, which gave Black people full political rights in the United States. But it is not clear that the average life of the average Black person is better now than it was, say, in 1959, when, as a result of the New Deal, there was a huge amount of growth in the United States. There was a huge amount of investment in social services. There was there was this just kind of revitalization of the economic structures of America that democratized them dramatically. Large labor unions, which tons of Black people joined. There was this sense that you could be like that. You could enter a sort of stable middle class life back then, even though you were suffering kind of from racial segregation, and in certain, especially in the South, you had fewer political rights than you do now. But now, when Black people have full political rights, and in the culture, it is not acceptable to basically be racist anymore. But the material conditions of the average Black person are not necessarily better than they were. And so just look at things like Tulsa, in which there was these thriving communities of Black businesses and culture and this neighborhoods that were very well off and growing and vibrant. I mean, I think a lot about like Spike Lee's Malcolm X movie, and when him and Malcolm him and Denzel are like young and walking through these kind of like post-war neighborhoods that were thriving, because of the economic boom caused by the recovery from the war and the New Deal. And then you think about like Black neighborhoods in the 1980s or the 1990s, the crack epidemic, neoliberalism, the collapse of manufacturing, the lack of unionized jobs. It's not necessarily that their lives are better, even though the political rights have been improved. Right. So the Democrats are taking all the wrong lessons, I think, from something like the Tulsa thing, in which they see all these Black businesses and they're like, instead of doing a new deal, a new version of the New Deal that is more expansive, it's greener, it's more inclusive, right, all the stuff that you want to do, they're just doing some more fucking capitalist bullshit, like, if only there were more Black businesses, and like that's not really going to change anything.
To me, what would be smarter would be a universal program that ensures that Black people get to take part in it, right? This sort of micro-targeting of Black people who can start solar and wind energy companies. It's just like the idea that that's how Black citizens are going to lift themselves out of the problems that we face is we're all going to become mini entrepreneurs in the green economy. That just doesn't seem like that's how that would work, because that's generally not how capitalism works. Some big company's going to come in, and if that sector is one that makes money, extracts money, some big company's going to come in and take over it. It's not going to be because there are all these small, thriving Black and brown, whatever businesses behind it. And a part of me doesn't want to hate on the sentiment, because the funny thing is that this is something that you hear amongst the black bourgeoisie set a lot. We need to start our own businesses. It's about ownership. It's about this, blah, 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 blah. And like, yes, we want to own businesses, but like everybody in your neighborhood can't own a business in the neighborhood, right?
Yeah,
some of
someone's
those
got to
people,
work for them.
right? Someone's got to work for them. Some of those people have to have jobs outside of the neighborhood that allows for them to spend money at those businesses. It doesn't work like that. It can't. A community can't all be little fiefdoms of entrepreneurs. Like, it doesn't work like that. Now, you know, please explain to me how you're going to put a bunch of black people in dope jobs. You know, are those infrastructure and those green economy jobs, are they going to be unionized? Will these people have pensions, et cetera, et cetera? Will it be competitive pay? Yeah, okay. Yeah, now you're talking to me. Like, those jobs are absolutely going to be, you know, the infrastructure jobs where they're building new roads and bridges and tunnels, et cetera, et cetera. If you explain to me you're going to target them in areas where black people live, are heavily populated, and they're going to be the ones that get the jobs and get the training and get the all of that. Yeah, hell yeah. Hell yeah. You put very well-paying jobs in communities where black people live, of course. And I know there's going to be black people listening to this like, oh, come on, man. We got to build our own businesses. We got to do like the Jews. Black people love saying that, by the way. I'm just telling you. I'm telling you. I'm not making this up. We got to do like the Jews. A Jewish dollar circulates for 20,000 years before it leaves the Jewish community. All of these terrible anti-Semitic rumors, but it's what you hear people say. Like because for many people, black people, the Jews are absolutely aspirational people. Like, they came here, they were fucking poor when they came to America, and they made a way for themselves. Never mind the fact that Jews get to pass. Whatever, Jews get to be white, you know, the major difference, guys. But, you know, it's often what you hear. It's about this sort of aspirational, entrepreneurial sort of salvation that a lot of black people think. And it doesn't surprise me that, you know, the administration has Kamala freaking Harris on the staff and in the administration, and how, you know, she's firmly entrenched within the black bourgeoisie. So it doesn't surprise me that this is something they think that would get black people excited, because it does get the right black people excited, honestly, to hear something like this.
Listen, not everyone can be an entrepreneur. Not everyone can be, you know, not everyone has that kind of thing. I don't know how to explain it. You know, that's the problem with the democratic and liberal obsession with entrepreneurship. Like, entrepreneurship affects what, like a 1% of the population, you know? How many people are out there, like, you know, starting businesses? Like, it's even in the best case scenario where like there weren't any of, you know, say we eliminated racism, like, even in that best case scenario, there'll still be like just this tiny fraction of the population that's entrepreneurs, and then everyone else has to work for them, you know? So I like to focus on the people who work for them, not the entrepreneurs, in any policy, whether it's green policy, anti-racist policy, or anything. You know, focus on the vast majority of people who actually have to work for a living, not the ones who get to start businesses, even with some sort of, you know, small business federal loan grant, whatever the fuck. You know, it's just the liberal. It's just some Democrat shit, as we were joking about before.
Yeah, it's the Dems. It's like this hyper focused, hyper targeted. I don't know, whatever. You know, hopefully Count the Dings gets a check, because since it's partially black owned,
they should apply. They should apply.
So we move on to another thing that is typically Democratic. This whole their hair being on fire about January 6th, and then the DOJ comes out and says, we're not prosecuting Trump or anybody for it. We're just going to get some of the people that were involved. Okay. Biden's DOJ. Okay. So I guess it wasn't that big of a deal, which is fine. Just shut the fuck up about it now. And then of course there's all the stuff with the John Lewis bill, you know, and everybody's like, well, we can't ruin democracy is coming to an end, but we can't ruin democracy by getting rid of the filibuster, not even if it's in service of saving the democracy. And it's just like, these fucking assholes are talking themselves into circles. but yet want us to believe that this is stuff that they actually care about. And, again, I want to say this very clearly. The Republicans didn't litigate the merits of getting Kavanaugh and Comey Barrett in there. They just packed the court. They said, we're packing it. I don't care. They're in. We don't care what you think the merits are. They're in. They're doing. They have the power. No, we don't argue with you. We have the courage of our conviction. Fuck you guys. They want to pass record-setting tax cuts. It's done. We don't do a public debate. We don't do, but the filibuster. Oh, but did we reach across the aisle? Oh, but they do it. They get in power and they do the shit that they get empowered to do. So what do Democrats do when they get in power? What have you been empowered to do? Allegedly, Joe Biden got in power to help us, to help the American people with jobs, et cetera, et cetera. What are y'all doing? What are they doing, Nando?
Well, it's so infuriating because they, like you said, they're hysterical about the January 6th thing. And they're like this, unprecedented assault on our democracy. I can't believe that they would not certify the results of the election, that, Joe Biden won fair and square, like forgetting the fact that in 2000 they stole an election, and like the Democrats just moved on with their lives. Like they stole that election in 2000, like straight up. Like, I don't know how to explain it. They fucking stole it. And the Democrats are just like, so now they're like, okay, this is an unprecedented thing, even though it's fully precedented. But okay, fine. It's an unprecedented thing. And they're just like losing their minds over this January 6th thing, like trying to do some sort of like Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Congress and like trying to get Republicans on board to join, this kind of like 9/11 commission style inquiry into the January 6th thing. And, meanwhile, Republicans are like laughing in their faces. And according to an article by Luke Savage in The Atlantic, he writes, as of March 24th, researchers at the Brennan Center for Justice had logged some 361 bills containing provisions that seek to restrict voting, a 43% increase from about the same time in February. So meanwhile, while the Democrats are like losing their shit over this, the Republicans are being strategic and they're putting forth 361 bills at the state level to restrict the vote, the franchise. The Democrats could counteract that. They could. They have the numbers in the Senate to pass an expansive voting rights bill, which is already on the books, the John Lewis voting rights bill and HR 1, which would really revolutionize voting in this country. I mean, it would create like a national automatic national voter registration, like greatly expand, mail-in ballots, a million things that would prevent all of these Republican efforts, which are well-funded and strategic to basically ensure minoritarian rule in this country forever. They could do it. They really could do it tomorrow if they wanted to. But they're dilly-dallying over the filibuster, over the thing, over whatever. And it's like, you can't have it both ways. You can't spend your freaking life with your hair on fire talking about the big bad Republicans and like this unprecedented threat to democracy and, the January 6th, like the greatest attack on our democracy since the Civil War, even though it's like clearly not. I mean, but whatever. That's beside the point. While at the same time, not doing anything to stop it, like not doing anything to stop these supposed unprecedented threats to democracy. That's what drives me crazy about them. It's like, that's what drives most people crazy about liberals, is that they're constantly freaking out, yet they don't do anything. They just don't do anything. Like you said, they don't have the power of their convictions. When they achieve power, they're desperately begging Republicans to join them on shit, even though the Republicans like would never, ever, ever join them on anything. So this idea that they're going to reach across the aisle, they're going to negotiate with the Republicans, that blah, 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 blah. It's all just Fantasyland shit. It's Fantasyland. Like, it's never going to happen. So just forget about it and just do your thing. Just exercise power. But they don't know how to do that.
And the midterms are coming up next year.
Yeah.
Next year. So, guys, the time is of the essence. Like, you're probably losing the Senate. Some people think you're losing a damn house. So the time to get something done is now. or else this thing is over and Biden's just going to be handcuffed for the rest of his administration and do whatever punk ass executive orders he can. And that'll be that. That'll be the legacy of this thing. Pass fucking infrastructure, pass the PRO Act, pass the damn John Lewis bill, get reelected again in 2024. It's really that freaking simple.
Yeah.
And anything short, like literally anything short of that is going to be death. It's going to be death. And so again, we got to pray that another crisis doesn't hit. We got to help some people and we got to move the fuck on, because we haven't brought up this segment in a long time, but it's a little segment I affectionately called Barry's administration was kind of dickheaded-ish. Kind of douchey, kind of sucked. Like, you know, it's 5 years later. It's been 13 years since 2008 when he got elected.
Yeah. As Ta-Nehisi Coates says, we were 8 years in power. Were we? I don't know what you're talking about there.
Yes, Nando, we were 8 years in power, which we I mean, Coates is kind of firmly entrenched in the elites now, so I guess maybe he was talking about the elites, but I don't think that's what he meant. I'm pretty sure he meant black people. But yeah, the problem with that is Barack Obama, man, his administration, vultures. And I guess people say that's kind of the point of public service is to one day cash out in the private sector. But it just feels like
that's not what it used to be. It used to be about service, you know, like you just want to help people. You just want to do your part to fucking help society. Like, not just a stepping stone to get rich. I don't know. Like that's people used to actually pretend that was the thing, you know, that there was some certain thing is like, you know, a higher calling to serve, to, you know, serve others. No, it's like, it's just completely obvious that it's just, oh, I'm going to do this for 3 years and then I'll just get paid millions of dollars by the most evil people on the planet to then turn around and use my connections to help them make more money.
Yeah. And so, you know, we said at the top of the show, Tom Perez, former labor secretary in the Obama administration, former chairman of the DNC. You know, this guy he's a Democratic Party insider by any measure of the word. He just took a job at, what's the name of this company?
It's called Venable LLP.
Venable LLP. It's basically a company with a bunch of lawyers who help corporations union bust.
Yeah.
Help corporations stay non-union. Now, you know, whatever. The Tom Perez thing is like, it's doubly disgusting because he worked in labor.
The labor secretary. He
was the labor secretary and he's now union busting. Like that's just disgusting. But you know, the story that you shared with me, Nando, goes on to name a few of these cats. You know, David Plouffe, you know, a bunch of the dude from Amazon, like a bunch of these cats have gone on to the private sector where they just continue to betray us. To betray us, meaning the American worker. Okay, the list includes Jay Carney,
at Amazon.
Went to Amazon, of course. Robert Gibbs, he spent several years with McDonald's. David Plouffe served as policy chief at Uber. And of course, Valerie Jarrett being on the board at Lyft. All former Obama people, all in the business of screwing workers over. You guys know what they did with Lyft and Uber, specifically here in California, refused to recognize them as full-time workers, and they crushed them with, what was it, Prop 22. Prop 22. That goes without saying. McDonald's clearly, they've been union busting for God knows how long. So obviously we know McDonald's get down, but then Tom Perez in his freaking press release said, no, I'm going to help them with policy against labor. That's my job.
Yeah. It's funny. Like I'm looking at the Venable LLP website right now, and it says like, as counsel to energy employers. Okay. Think about it. It's not just you know, it's not just union, like they brag about their council for like the energy sector, which is the most evil sector. As counsel to energy employers across the nation, we are concerned with every aspect of the employer-employee relationship in the energy industry. Our decades of experience across a wide range of industries and practice areas can help you control your labor costs, i.e., the wages that you pay actual people, avoid workplace disputes, and defend yourself when litigation arises. So Tom Perez, again, who, like you said, it was Obama's labor secretary. And I remember it was like a big deal because he was Latinx, you know,
he was Latinx.
He was Latinx. And, you know, he was like supposedly the guy who was to use the Department of Labor, which is a very important federal department, which has been totally hollowed out ever since like the decline of unions. But it's supposed to like help settle labor disputes and advocate for workers. Okay, this guy was Obama's labor secretary. He was then the chairman of the DNC, which, if you remember, was
stole the job
from Keith Ellison. Yeah,
Yes,
after
sir.
Obama made a couple phone calls and was like, this is Keith Ellison.
He's a socialist. We don't need him.
We can't. We got to get my boy Tom in there. If you remember, I will never forget that. That was Obama's first political act since he left the White House, was to intervene at the DNC race to block Keith Ellison and install Tom Perez, who now is cashing in for his loyal years of service on behalf, carrying water for, you know, the worst people on the planet. And now he's just going to get paid for it. He's just going to get paid like Tim Geithner got paid, like Jay Carney got paid, like Robert Gibbs got paid. Like all of these guys got paid. And if you can't say this, the problem with
Geithner got $600 million. It was like the month after he left. It wasn't even
like a fund that like foreclosed on regular people, like just awful evil vulture
JP
shit.
Morgan Chase, his boy Jamie Dimon, was ready with $600 million.
Yeah, and if you don't see the problem with that, the warped incentives that it creates within, you know, people who work for our government, then I don't know what to tell you, but it's very obvious that is how, you know, people focus on money in politics, and money in politics is a problem. Don't get me wrong. I would love to reform how elections get financed, but really the big problem is capitalism, because the people, the owners, the bosses, they always have money.
Buy people. Yeah.
And they don't have to buy them while they're in government. They just buy them right after. And that just tells the next guy, he's like, oh shit. Jay Carney's making how much at Amazon? Fucking dumbass Jay Carney is making how much? Fucking dumbass Tom Perez. I mean, if you ever watch Tom Perez speak, he's like one of the stupidest people on the planet. You know, like he's making how much? That's a fucking law firm. Right. Yeah, I'm gonna fucking do whatever.
I'm gonna do what these people ask me to do and trust that they're gonna take care of me.
And they do. They never forget.
Yeah, it's just really a shame how nakedly corrupt the entire process is. It's, you know, I just don't understand how, as a citizen, I just don't see how as a citizen you can ever trust the process ever again. This guy freaking works at labor and now is being bought and paid for by the most anti-labor people on the planet. It's just terrible. Anyway, that's our show for this week. I'm Big Wos for Nando. Make sure you become a Patreon at countthedings.com/countthedings. Excuse me, patreon.com/countthedings. Support what we do over here. We appreciate you guys. We'll see you next week. Peace out.